Are you tired, weak, slow, ineffective? Lacking in deadly precision? Unfashionable? Well then, try Samurai, the fashion that never dies. Samurai will give you whatever you need to complete your mission, whether it be assassination or just looking damn cool. Samurai. Samurai. Samurai.
What's up guys, CJ from Team Millennium Ninja here, back to talk about today's episode of Lupin Part 6, the Samurai Collection, and this was a pretty good one-off episode, although not as good as what we've been getting from Season 2 so far, in my opinion, but it was still an enjoyable watch nonetheless, if for no other reason than to see Goemon being a fashion model. A distinct lack of Jigen in this episode though, but since last week's was a Jigen-centric episode, his loss isn't felt too much in this one. Though I would have liked to see his reaction to Goemon being a fashion model, and maybe him teasing him a little bit about it could have been fun, but alas was not the case. This episode is split into kind of an A-plot, B-plot that converge at the end, with the A-plot being Goemon modeling for a famous fashion designer by the name of Gabby, and the B-plot being Lupin and Fujiko trying to steal the collection that Goemon is modeling. Clothes which are very rare and never sold, only obtainable through the black market, which I thought was a bit silly when I first heard it, although when it's explained that she never sells the clothes, it made more sense, but buying clothes on the black market is still a bit of a ridiculous notion to me. And that aside, the bits with Goemon training to be a fashion model were pretty interesting to me, especially with Gabby coaching them, giving hilariously vague instructions. Now, if you haven't seen the episode yet, you may be wondering why Goemon is even doing this in the first place. Well, you see, at the beginning of the episode, Goemon was busy training in the Arctic when he had a bit of an accident, and Gabby, who was there chilling with her boat, just so happened to save him. Now, if you know Goemon, you know this is a big deal, so in order to repay his debt for her saving his life, he agrees to model for her new fashion line. Something that Goemon struggles with at first, causing Gabby to tell him to practice walking the runway 1,000 times every day, which Goemon does, and he walks his heart out, so hard that he collapses, something that I found a bit contrived. You mean to tell me that after all the training that Goemon's done in his life, he can't handle walking every day? And on top of that, the walking and turning makes him better at his normal training? Seems a bit much, but it's not the most egregious thing and has little to no bearing on the plot, so I'll give it a pass. What I did like in this episode though were Goemon and Gabby's interactions, especially the scene where she asks him why he never gave up on his training, talking about how her love for fashion design has become more of a prison than a freedom. And Goemon's straightforward answers help her to see that while she might not find what she's looking for now, as long as she keeps looking, she'll eventually find the answer. After that, the actual event gets underway, and Zenigata arrives with Yada, who is starstruck by all the celebrities in attendance, which isn't much, but it's at least nice to have him adding a different element to the episode. It shows his youthful inexperience as well as his lack of focus in comparison to Pops, which is at least something to highlight about his character rather than the usual nothing. They also bump into Fujiko in the crowd, and after the show gets underway, Pops makes a remark about how he thinks he recognizes Goemon. To which I'm like, come on, he's been tracking these guys for how long and he still doesn't recognize their faces? But as the show goes on, Lupin makes his appearance dressed as a camel. Him and Goemon talk as they continue with the show, and Goemon expresses that he doesn't want Lupin to ruin the show, but as Lupin gets animated, Goemon chases him around, which causes a good reaction from the crowd and from Gabby, who in a fit of inspiration changes the show to be more chaotic. All the while, Lupin hops on his drone hovercraft thing that got inside and sat there with nobody noticing it, I guess. He then proceeds to lift the clothes off of the racks. Meanwhile, Fujiko uses her drone to suck up the ones off of the models. Goemon takes umbrage with this and tries to stop Lupin, which he does after Gabby tosses him his sword. And something I forgot to mention earlier was how Goemon told Gabby that he couldn't trust just anybody with his sword, but after they had their little heart-to-heart talk, he asked her to hold on to it during the performance. So that's why she had to throw it to him. Goemon then makes quick work of Lupin and Fujiko's drones, and the show ends in success. Afterwards, we get a scene of Gabby and her manager reflecting on what happened and agreeing to do it again sometime. And before I wrap up, just a couple things that I want to mention. First of all, for an episode about fashion, the clothes on display didn't seem that interesting or creative, which I thought was pretty lame. They could have at least given us some zany stuff to work with here, which they did a little bit, but there were a lot of just white outfits. Also, the reason Lupin went to steal the clothes in the first place was because Fujiko said she'd bang him if he did, which has never worked out for Lupin ever, but he still falls for it anyway. Boy needs to start asking for payment up front. And that'll do it for this week's episode of part 6. Next week's is looking pretty interesting. It looks like Lupin's going to be going up against a supercomputer, which is something that's been done quite a lot in Lupin, so we'll just have to wait and see if part 6 is going to do anything interesting on that. And it also looks like there's going to be a double episode drop next week. I don't know what the other one could be about, so we'll just have to wait until then to see. I hope to see you guys there, and this has been CJ from Team Millennium Ninja, headed back to the village hidden in the internet.